Welcome everyone who's watching us on the Pivot Facebook, and everyone who's here in the Zoom. You're welcome to join if you're on the Facebook now to join the Zoom as well. We're gonna do a debrief of everything that just went down. So hopefully you're able to join us just to give y'all a brief intro and welcome. My name is Nguyen. I'll be one of your MCs slash moderators slash host slash a little bit drunk tonight after what we just saw. And with me is Kat. Kat, if you won't mind introducing yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Kat. I'll pronounce she, her, hers. I am also here co-moderating with Philip, and excited to hear what everyone who's been slacking away and commenting has to say about what we all just watched.
So we've got a bunch of people on the Zoom this time, right? We should do a couple introductions. I'm just gonna stop the screen share for a second. So we've got a couple of guests. We've got folks from, I mean, everyone's from Pivot, but some fellows, folks from Viet Fact Check and President himself. So maybe we can start with some introductions. How should we pass the mic, Kat? Maybe we'll do
I'll
the
just
fellows
follow on
first.
the order of which I see it. So
Okay.
Start with Frederick.
You can let us know who you are, where you're from.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Frederick. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I'm a Pivot Fellow for Texas. And tonight I'm drinking vodka.
You want to?
Sorry, did you say Vinh? Oh, hi, my name is Vinh. I use him, his pronouns. I'm currently in Pennsylvania right now, where apparently Joe Biden was not born, based on Trump's comments. Super excited to be here.
Summer.
Hello, my name is Summer. My pronouns she, her, hers, and I am currently based in Arizona, Pivot Fellow for Arizona, and yeah.
Lillian.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lillian. I use she, her, her pronouns. I'm currently based in Austin, Texas, and I'm one of the Texas Fellows. I'm drinking a good old pale ale.
Minhty.
Hi, my name is Min. I go by he, him, his pronouns, and I currently reside in Chandler, Arizona, and I'm a Pivot Fellow with Summer at AZAANHPI for Advocates, and I'm just drinking water.
All right, Tung.
Did you say me?
Yes, I did.
Sorry, I'm already out of it. So first of all, my name is Nguyen, he, him, his. I renounced the title of president after this performance last night by the guy who's called president. So I'm no longer president of Pivot. I am drinking this cheap ass red wine that Thuy gave me.
All right, I did the honors renaming you in this Zoom, and then Nick, can you introduce yourself and who's with you?
Yeah, I am Nick Nguyen, and I work on Viet Fact Check. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm drinking a Diet Coke. I drink anything with caffeine in it because I have two small children. This is the bigger one. What's your name?
Ada.
And how old are you?
5.
There you go. And this is Ada, and she's 5, and she's a kindergartner. And I'm in Palo Alto, California.
Great, thanks y'all for the introductions, and also shout outs to Thuy for this cheap ass wine, quoting Tung for that one. So I think we should just get into it. First impressions, what y'all thought from the first presidential debate. We talked first about maybe the most memorable moments, right? Best moments, worst moments. I think it'd probably be better if we just do like a round robin style, since we have so many people, and just pop off one after another. I know Tung was pretty eager to hop on, and he's a little bit drunk, so we probably want to get him before his sleeping time. So would you mind starting us off, Tung, and then we'll just take it from there.
Well, I'll start off with finishing up what the whole debate was about, which is, I said no minds were changed by this debate. Everybody was arguing to their base, which I think is bad for Trump, because he's the one who needs to convert the undecided. Biden's got the majority of votes in many places, or nearly 50% in most places. So Trump's got to get the conversion, and he didn't do it. But I will also say that while no minds were changed, if you are undecided, you have no mind. So.
If you're undecided, you have no mind. I mean, I felt like a lot of it was, one of the other things that I'm thinking about, maybe we could table this for later, is like whether the mute button helped or hurt either candidate, right? But maybe one of the Pivot Fellows, we'll start with Lillian. What do you think about your hot takes from the debate?
I personally felt like certain people were not actively using facts and factual statistics to their advantage to make their case. I kind of felt like they were, I don't know, I kind of equated it to playing Among Us, where people are trying to run out the timer by just saying whatever comes to mind. I just felt, especially with the climate change thing, because I'm such an activist for the climate. I personally felt like the plans presented by Trump were not fully fleshed out, thought out plans. And just the thing about wind energy killing birds, you know, I just think it's kind of ridiculous to be asserting these kinds of claims throughout the debate without any kind of follow-up or factual obligation. It was just really frustrating.
You can popcorn it to another fellow.
I will popcorn it to Summer.
I am more of the, I would say, like social justice side when it comes to like political stuff. Still educating myself on like, you know, the economic side and like all that good stuff. But I say the most memorable parts of the entire debate is the fact that Trump was like, oh, I am the least racist person in this room. When he said that, I was like, oh, no. The way I felt was, because we all know that is not the case whatsoever. But yeah, and all of the argument or everything that he brought up to the table when they were talking about race was just stuff he pulled out of his ass, pretty much, essentially. So yeah. Oh, and then I popcorn.
Yes.
Or just go for it, Summer. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Popcorn to Min. You go, Min.
I'm just gonna, go off of what you said, that he's the least racist person ever, and to compare him to Abe, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm still trying to process everything. I don't have the right words for it. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. I don't
Maybe
have
that
the
can
right
be
words
our
for it.
maybe that can be our first like kind of entry point into our discussion, right? Is this the discussion around race? I feel like it was really, I think the question that the moderator asked, and also shout outs, I think, I don't remember her name, but I know she was the second Black woman in history to moderate a presidential debate, right? She asked the question of what each of the candidates would say to Black parents that would need to have the talk with their children, right? And then Joe Biden, I think, provided, or Vice President Biden provided a little bit more detail into how he could empathize with, the different families and the parents that have to have the talk with their children, whereas, Donald Trump just kind of hopped around everywhere. I know Nick during the Slack in the live Slack was like, Trump's just trying to list as many races as he can name off the top of his head, right? So Nick, would you mind elaborating on that? I mean, what were you thinking about when he was talking about race, and what were the facts behind that?
I think look. I think there's a huge lack of empathy here, and you see him kind of stumbling. I mean, we got maximum Trump, right? Like we see him stumbling, even trying to he's doing the verbal tick where he's like trying to come up with names like I support the Asians and the Blacks and the Mexicans, which is not even a race, but just like it came across as kind of inauthentic. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone saw anything that they haven't already seen, but I think for me, again, he had a slow pitch to denounce, to demonstrate more understanding of BLM, and he didn't do that, and he didn't denounce any of the many sort of racist groups that he is dog whistled. So that's my hot take on the race issue.
And everyone has their mics muted, but I'm like,
Oh, one more
can
thing
just-
I wanted to
Oh,
say
yeah.
is I wish someone would bring up that like police are getting killed far more by mask holes than anyone else, than protesters and anyone else, right? It's like, it's by far the #1 killer of law enforcement. And so to see these people get on stage and talk about how they embrace cops and they won't even tell people to wear a mask, they are definitely much more complicit in the death of law enforcement officers. I think anyone, regardless of your political stripe, would be against. And so it really is, I only bring it up because often the framing is law enforcement versus like BLM agitators. And the reality is quite different. And I wish someone would just bring it up on mic.
My take on it was that Trump is trying to deal with what Biden did 20 years ago. And I think Biden's already came out and said that he regretted his actions. I think Joe was really very passionate when he talked about it. You could tell that he felt it. I think one of his great qualities is that he's empathetic. So you can feel it. When he talked about that, when he talked about the kids who are separated from their parents, the empathy is really there. And I think the contrast is that Trump has no empathy. There really wasn't a single shred of empathy for anybody who suffered during any of the conversation that they talked about.
Yeah, and I think it's also to that point, Joe Biden was vice president, and it was a little bit difficult because the Congress wasn't always on their side. Trump actively has a Republican Senate that is actively working with him, and he hasn't passed any of the measures that he said that he was going to during his campaign for presidency. And now he's actively going into this and saying that Joe Biden, as a vice president in a split government, was not able to do the measures that he set out to do. And so I think that that's extremely hypocritical of him.
I think just to like echo everyone, I always try to figure out like after these debates, like what do my parents think? I text my dad, I'm like, oh, what did you think? And he's like, oh, yeah, Trump's totally talking out of his ass. And I think what was really inspiring for me is like my dad was always, he's like, okay, after this debate, I'm going to decide who I'm going to vote for. And you're going to be the first person I tell, because I tell all of them, I'm part of this pivot group and everything. And I'm doing all this like political activism this year. And, he texted me, he's like, okay, I think I'm going to go for Biden. And I was like, thank God. Because like, I was sending, and Nick, I appreciate you sending all that stuff because I was sending it to my dad during this whole thing. I'm like, hey, Dad, you should like read into this stuff and do all this fact checking. And honestly, the pivot fact checking, Viet fact check was super helpful in all this. I just also want to echo, like, appreciate this space and to like be able to, share this with all of you. But yeah, okay, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think on that note, right, like talking to our parents and maybe our elders during this time, we've heard a lot about it in the rest of our community and how they've struggled, succeeded in engaging their parents in this. And I just want to hear from, anyone who's willing, open to share how has that been for you? Have you, like you shared that, Vinh, I guess everyone else here, have you been able to talk to your elders about this? How have you been able to share certain facts? I know also like very recently today, right? Biden released that op-ed in English and Vietnamese to Vietnamese Americans. How are you reacting to that? How are your parents reacting to that?
So shout out to the Viet fact check team for all the hard work they've been doing. The Texas GOP sent my mother a text message from their text banking to go vote for Donald Trump and keep Texas red. She screenshotted it, sent it to me, and was just like, look what trash showed up in my phone today. And she, typically votes Republican, so that is a big deal. I don't think she's had time to read the Biden op-ed yet. So if anyone else wants to chime in about that, but the Viet fact check has been very helpful in disproving a lot of the myths perpetuated by Vietnamese YouTubers. So great job, team.
I'm also going to go ahead and just screen share the Cú Phó Tổng thống Joe Biden viết cho người Mỹ gốc Việt in Viet báo, right? And I'm going to drop it in the chat too so we can share it in the Facebook. For you, Frederick, and for anyone watching us right now to be able to share it with their parents, I know, I mean, at your question, Kat, like for me, talking to my parents is hard. Like they are, I mean, talking to anyone in my family is hard, I think, particularly around politics, not only because of like Dagne Dankia, right? Like one side or the other, but just like because I feel like they know that politics is especially hot right now, right? And so they've honestly been urging me and my little sister to like stay out of the politics, which just like pushes us to get involved into it even more and then do things like you know, this weekend there are a couple of Viets for Biden rallies going on, right? That we're going to be at. One's in San Jose, one's in Seattle, 11 a.m. Shameless plug. But I'm also wondering, since we have such a diverse group of Pivot Fellows here, which is one of the first times we've had Pivot Fellows on this Thumbsu with Pivot, right? Thumbsu Vanyao. In where y'all are at, like, is the community as fervently for Trump or anti-Trump? Like, if you were to, let's say, go to a Viets for Biden rally, like, and you're in a Viet-centric area, are you going to be afraid that you're going to get called a tangjia? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that something that comes up? I'm going to look at Vinh since you're.
So the other day I was in Philly and I was putting up Viet fact check things that I got from Untu, and there's a whole bunch of like Vietnamese like for Trump supporters. And what I thought was crazy was like when I was putting it up, a ton of like Vietnamese people came up to me and were like, "Oh hey, like don't mind them. Like there's actually not that many around here. Like you can trust us. Like we have like we'll take your you know, your like, brochures and everything handed around." But I think, I mean, this is more like a personal, but like I think for me, it was always hard to talk to like my parents about this kind of stuff, mostly because like there wasn't a lot that I could do in terms of like translations and like being able to find the facts. And I think as soon as I joined Pivot and started being able to like use things like the Viet fact check, it just became so much easier. And it became a lot easier talking to my grandma about it too, because I didn't really have to say anything. I just had to, hey, you should read this and check this out, and then kind of like let her, you know, make her own decision. But at least, I mean, that's been my experience so far. Honestly, a blessing to be here. So.
For me personally, it's been a rough battle. I would say like my family, like all with my immediate family as well as my extended family, they're very like pro Trump, like yeah, fuck. Sorry, mind my language, but like f the liberals type of thing. Like I'm so for Trump. Like I don't go home as often as I used to, but my sister is still at home, and they went to like a family gathering at my grandparents' house. She sends me a Snapchat and she's like, why does Umwai have a picture of Donald Trump framed on his desk? Like he literally has a picture of Trump framed on his desk. And I was like, I texted her, I was like, steal it, take it and toss it out, because what the heck? And so every time, like I don't really go home often, and when I do, I don't know, I feel like I'm that one family member, like they're proud of me because I'm the first person to go to college, but at the same time, because I'm the first person to go to college and I like to speak up a lot, they're kind of just like, oh yeah, don't listen to her, like she's crazy type of thing, you know. And so it's been really a big struggle. And whenever my dad not the other day, but a couple weeks ago, he was like, hey, can you buy me a Trump hat? And I was like, no, I'm not gonna let you buy that. You want to get your ass beat? Like, I mean, I don't think he would, because Arizona is like a pretty red state. But I was just like, no, like what the heck? And I haven't yet forwarded like the Viet fact check to them. I'm gonna try to do that and see what happens. But they like to watch a lot of those Vietnamese YouTubers and stuff. I do my best, but it's a struggle out here. But yeah, that's just my experience with it.
I don't have a lot of experience being that I'm relatively new to Arizona, but personally from my family, we all hate Trump, and I'm very thankful for that. That I don't necessarily have to have that conversation with my parents, who are my dad's 80, my mom's 70, and they hate Trump more than anything. Their best friend hates Trump too, so we're very lucky to have that conversation with them, that they can talk to their friends about not voting for Trump. Um, But Summer and I did go to a couple of Vietnamese restaurants last week to pass out some of the Biden Trump flyers in Vietnamese and English. We went to 11 of them, and only two of them said no. So that is a big accomplishment on our end because we thought we were gonna get a lot of no's and a lot of um, stares and negative feedback. But in reality, it was just only two no's, and they were very shy no's, reluctant no's. Um, Separate from that, earlier today I went canvassing in Chandler, Arizona, which is a predominantly Asian with a lot of Vietnamese people living here, and a lot of them were very reluctant to share who they voted for, right? And I don't really have an reason why, but that seems to be the case for a lot of the Vietnamese people out here that they're afraid to share who they're voting for, even though I had an idea they were actually voting for Trump. And that's my piece.
For sure. Thanks, man. Speaking of red states, right? I know one of the things that I've been seeing get circulated is that I think Texas is going to might turn blue for the first time in over 40 years. Right. So I'm gonna pass it on to our fellow from Texas to talk a little bit more about that and any experiences you might have over with the Viet community over there, Lillian and Frederick.
Yeah, so I think that it's really fantastic that the state of Texas is, finally coming to a point where we could potentially be a swing state. Traditionally, after having been Republican for however many years, in the Houston community, which I believe is actually the second largest or the largest Vietnamese refugee community outside of California, there was actually an insurance company owner who had posted a billboard that read Black Lives Matter and Stop Racism in English and Vietnamese. And because of this, he had actually received a lot of hate for putting up that billboard in the community, to the point where people were calling for him to be lynched and like considering boycotting his business. And I think that it's incredibly difficult to have to go against your community like that. But also, there have been a lot of efforts through Viets for Biden and organizations like that have actually set up rallies in the Houston area to actively campaign for Biden in the Chinatown, so to speak, or I mean, the Asian American Pacific Islander part of Houston. And so I think it's really fantastic to see the refugee community start to show up for that. I think in particular, the community is still extremely divided on who they want to align with. And I think that that is in part due to this misalignment that the policies that Democrats or liberals particularly stand for are aligned with some of the traumas that they had faced in the past. And I think that it is just a lot of misinformation. And so I'm really grateful to Viet Fact Check for helping us to kind of dismantle those myths, because it's just, to me, it's about the perception of being a decent human being and making life livable for all people and not necessarily just for some people. And I've had conversations about that with my roommate, where his parents own a business, and they are hard Trump supporters because they believe that the policies enacted by conservatives are helping their business, when in reality that's not necessarily the case, because they are middle to low income families. So that's kind of the fight that that's kind of what we're actively working to move against, essentially, is to inform people about the actual consequences of the policies that have been enacted over the last 4 years.
So I'm in Dallas, which has a smaller Vietnamese community than Houston, but it still is a relevant and large Vietnamese community. And I do believe that we have a stronger chance of flipping Texas blue than we've ever had before in state legislature. For example, take House District 112 in Garland, where a lot of Vietnamese Americans live. Angie Chen Button is a Republican, and she has only won that seat because she is Asian. Asian folks vote for her simply because of the fact that she's Asian and she did the outreach, right? And this year, we're seeing that that's not the case. Asian people have really stepped up and kind of informed their community that, she doesn't represent our values. She doesn't represent our community. and she's out here for herself. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of the state races that Pivot has targeted to help flip the state legislature blue. And just a little background, the reason why Pivot is focusing on flipping the state blue is because redistricting will happen in 2021, and that will affect politics in Texas for the next 10 years. So if we're able to flip the state blue, we will flip Texas blue for the next 10 years. And that is a huge deal, both on the state level and the national level. A little background on me, I actually worked at Đài Phát thanh Việt Nam Dallas all throughout my college. So I'm very well aware of how Republican the Viet Nam community is, especially here in the DFW. And to answer your question, Philip, no, I would not be comfortable going to a Biden rally in Dallas, mostly because the pro-Trump Vietnamese Americans here, they crazy. They crazy and they love guns, and I don't love that. So, you know, for me, it's a little different, but, you know, if Texas flips blue, maybe that'll change. And I think someone said in the Slack channel something about if conservatives' minds will be changed. I worked for the Texas GOP over the summer, and I can tell you that there are many conservatives and Republicans who are never Trumpers, but they will never come out publicly to say it. They might sit out this election, but they're not, they will support him publicly. Kind of like what John Cornyn is doing right now. I think the Star Telegram in Fort Worth published an article saying that, where he said, you know, I've opposed Trump privately. So do a lot of Republicans, but it's really, you know, if you still support him publicly, it doesn't matter.
Oh, well, shout out to our fellows for getting so much work done in a couple of weeks now leading up to it. I mean, we heard a lot about red states, and you know, I think it's sometimes a misunderstanding that just because there are blue states doesn't mean there aren't Trump supporters or alt-right conservatives in states like California, Washington, where I'm from. But I just love to hear from our Californians. Yeah, what are your takes on this? How is the community getting out? What does it look like where both of you are?
I'm pretty isolated. I'm in San Francisco. So, and I go to San Jose, and there is a pretty fervent Trump support there. I had put on Facebook, I went to church, and the church lady, one of the church ladies, asked me to do some Trumpy thing. So I was pretty upset about that. But I know that in Orange County, things are pretty bad for those who are pro-Biden. So there was a recent video on a Biden rally, I think last Saturday, the Saturday before, where there were just these crazy middle-aged Vietnamese men just screaming at very calm Biden supporters, you know, so.
Yeah, what I would say is so first of all, I live in Palo Alto now, so there aren't that many Vietnamese people. My one Vietnamese neighbor that I know of has a Black Lives Matter sign, so I felt like it was safe to send her a Viet fact check. And she's very appreciative, but she's also like, I'm terrified of my relatives, I'm not going to forward it. But I'll keep working on her because she walks her dog in front of my house. So we'll see if I can get to her. I grew up in Ohio, and my parents are lifelong Republicans. But you know, they actually, I think, understand like sort of the Republican platform and how Trump has deviated from that. And I think they really didn't like Biden, but I think they also believed a lot of things that I just sort of accepted. You know, when we were in Viet Fact Check, we were going to write the Biden piece. The original approach was operating on the assumption that that Democrats had changed and that Biden was in fact against refugees. And so we were very pleasantly surprised when we found out the opposite was true. And so that was like really great to be able to do that research. And there's a lot of, you know, and you know, it's not just the internet, a bunch of like sort of contemporary conversations popped up that became transcripts and that were public. So it's a lot easier to kind of do that kind of work. I am personally, I'm sure everyone on the Viet Fact Check team is like super super grateful to hear all these great stories, because this is, you know, the way I described Viet Fact Check in a meeting earlier today was it's kind of like a love letter. I don't think to our parents' generation, right? Like, I don't think my parents really understood how much I cared about the Vietnamese community before I started working on this. And when I started working on this, at first they were like, you know, even though they're lifelong Republicans, they're like, Republican Vietnamese people are crazy. You're going to get killed. I'm like, I hope not. I'm in Palo Alto, so they'd have to drive at least. And now I think they're actually really proud of what I've done. And so I think that I know that I have a commitment to them from them not to vote for Trump. I'm not going to push it farther than that. I don't want to be disappointed. But I know they're very proud of the work we're doing, and I think they're also really proud that all these second generation Vietnamese Americans that understand policy really well, but don't necessarily have the language skills to communicate. Like we're really partnering with people that can write in Vietnamese, and I think it's creating a new kind of engagement with our families that hasn't really happened before. Like my mom, I've written a lot in my previous jobs, but never in Vietnamese because I don't speak Vietnamese really well. And so for my mom to read something that I've written and understand the points that I've made is like really moving for me personally. So yeah, like I said, great to hear that people appreciate the work we're doing, and we're going to keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Nick. And I think it is, I mean, this idea that all the stuff that we're doing is like with Viet Fact Check, with Viet Vote, all these different pivot projects, with all the fellows that we've placed in these battleground states, it really is a love letter from us to our community, right? And we're really doing what we believe will be best, not only for us, right? It's not about sides, but it's about each other, right? And I think that, I mean, it's so incredibly beautiful and it's so incredibly powerful. I do also, we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna show a love letter, an actual, I mean, a love letter, literally a love letter, right? From one of our pivot members, Tung, who wrote a letter out to her mother about why she should vote this upcoming election, and I'll just share it with you all and let it speak for itself. So enjoy.
My Asian immigrant mom doesn't understand why I'm so political. She doesn't worry about policies. She worries I won't find a nice boy to marry and take care of me. She doesn't know her legislators, and she definitely doesn't want to talk to them. But my Asian immigrant mom knew how to raise 4 independent daughters and send us all to college. When I was growing up, my mom worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Her reward for raising me, her youngest, to adulthood was losing her Medicaid health insurance, and as contracted labor, she had no employer-sponsored health insurance, no matter the hours she worked. Mothers like mine are now protected from coverage gaps because of the ACA, but all that and more is at risk, especially for immigrant women. My Asian immigrant mom doesn't understand why I'm so political, but she just has to look in the mirror. This November, I vote for moms like mine.
Thank you so much, Lynn, if you're watching out there, and tell everyone that has been able to share their story on the Pivot YouTube page. You can check it out, and we're gonna drop the link on our Facebook Live right now, bit.ly/projectbagang, hashtag for other people, right? We're really trying to get these messages out there to the people who are gonna listen, right? But who are also so inclined not to listen to things that are coming out of not the Trump YouTubes or like all of those conservative, all those places that where like I feel like my parents and probably some of yours get all their information from, right? I want to pivot a little bit to the Voice of Pivot. I know we have some engagement on our Facebook live stream, and we have some folks here in the Zoom to field some questions that they have. So Voice of Pivot, if you could.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have Tung Nguyen on Facebook says, thank you Pivot for hosting. I just have a few questions that I hope Pivot can help shape for us Vietnamese toward getting better involved. 1, most of Viet Trump supporters are not English fluent. Will Pivot consider future intensive Viet only outreach, like hosting events such as this Nhậu and Tâm Sự, where Viet speaking folks will be able to join as well? And regardless of who wins, there's a wound that Trump has created that divided our Viet communities across the US. What can Pivot do to help reconcile the relationship? Maybe too soon to answer this, but does anybody raise your hand if you actually want to respond to this, to Tung?
Can I respond to myself? No, I did not submit that question. I am not a unique human being as far as my name's concerned. I will say, number one, it's a really great point that we need to do more Vietnamese language outreach, both for the election and everything else. We've been doing some, but actually what this election has done is generated a ton of capable Vietnamese speakers and translators. We have now a big group of people who can get information done. We're trying to recruit more Vietnamese speakers so that we can do these in language. But I think the idea of having another one of these tâm sự and nhậu in Vietnamese, I won't be on it because I'm not good enough, but other people might. What's the second question about how do we heal? I think we heal the way we've always healed, which is we look back at our past and see all the suffering that's gone on across our generations, acknowledge that suffering, and then, think about how we can work in the future to prevent that suffering among ourselves. Like an example in Lynn's example, that if we smash up the Affordable Care Act, that Vietnamese elders are going to suffer. And then we also need to plan for the future for the young folks, because I think old folks also care about young folks, the young folks that are theirs at least.
Great, thank you. There's also a comment from Nguyen who asks, who are the influential Viet YouTubers affecting our community's views? I'm new to this, but I want to learn more. And Tri Lung, who replied to Anne and said, he lists a few names. I will not mention them because we don't need to amplify those people. But he's saying that these names on YouTube are the misinformation spreaders using the YouTube platform to poison the Vietnamese community, especially to those whose English is not good enough to read the US media outlets. Mai Nguyen says, I am living in OC and I can see the divided community. The older Vietnamese tends to be pro-Trump, but the younger generation tends to be pro-Biden. I don't know if anybody has noticed, any of our fellows, are we noticing, I've only heard anecdotally that we're starting to notice more older Vietnamese who are coming out as pro-Biden. Are you guys seeing that or hearing that at all? If you are, speak up. Otherwise, I'll keep scrolling down. I'll look at some other comments.
Not in Arizona, from what I have seen, unfortunately, but that's just my experience. I just feel I see the separation between the older generation and the younger generation, with the older being pro-Trump and then the younger being pro-Biden.
Oh, but Mai Nguyen says the older folks talk loud in public, but the younger voters vote by mail very early for Biden. So maybe that's a good thing. Christine Pham commented on Nick's daughter. She's adorable. Lynn's story is so powerful. We also have people on Zoom as well. Let's see here.
Maybe actually before we go to the rest of the comments at Voice of Pivot, I've got a couple more videos queued up from our project backup, a project that I think might be good to share. We mentioned Lê Nguyen earlier from Texas, the guy with the billboards, right? And I know that I think on some Facebook group they also doctored his photo, right, to like show him like wearing like the like a communist flag on his shirt. And so it really, I mean, when we talk about, as we're debriefing the debate, like, and on Slack, right, how people are kind of just able to lie, right? It's kind of appalling. But to speak also to the point about how we reach the Vietnamese community, the in-language Vietnamese community in Vietnamese, this might be a really good example.
Xin chào quý vị, xin chào các bạn, xin chào bà con. I am a lifelong Republican who has never voted for a Democratic presidential candidate. This election will be the most important of my entire life.
And therefore, I can no longer remain silent. As Americans, we can disagree about policies all day long. However, there are certain values that make up the bedrock of our wonderful democracy. Values like decency, humanity, truth, honor, sacrifice, and unity should always be non-negotiable.
I'm putting our great country over my political party. I will be voting for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Hãy đi bầu và bỏ phiếu cho Biden and Harris.
I swear, I think all like Vietnamese uncles have that like American flag hat, and it really speaks to that whole community, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I know, Vinh, you also mentioned that you know, to connect with your the older generation of folks in your family. It's like a 4-year. Said it was like a 4-year battle, right? So,
Yeah. So like, I mean, full disclosure, my parents both voted for Trump in 2016, and me and my brothers were all very progressive, and it was a lot of tough conversations, and I was very angry at the beginning. But I got involved with like different advocacy spaces like Ikasu, now Pivot, and it kind of like got me into this mindset of like, okay, how can I understand people's or my parents, like their traumas and what they grew up with, and recognize that stuff, and then kind of bring it into the context. You know, I can't express enough how helpful Viet Fact Check was to like give me some kind of basis to like start talking to them more about it. But yeah, I think it definitely took a long time for me to have that conversation, and it was a lot of like seed plantings. But I'm gonna pass it over to Lillian because I know she wanted to say something.
I mean, I was just going to say that the Vietnamese community in Houston, largely from the response that we've gotten with our outreach, the majority are Trump supporters. And I think it's largely because their trauma is being weaponized against them because they view the most important thing to them as economic growth, right? And they believe that under a conservative government, that economic growth is only going to get better for them. They have also largely been misaligned to consider they've considered the Democratic Party to be aligned with a lot of the things that they tried to escape in Vietnam. And I think that that's extremely misinformed, because if you think about kind of the industries, I guess, that a lot of Vietnamese Americans in Houston are working in, it can be extremely dangerous. There aren't a lot of regulations around those things. I think about the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative that worked to make nail salons safer for Vietnamese Americans in California. That kind of community engagement is just not here in Texas. They're not considering, you know, that healthcare for the masses might be more beneficial for them, you know, as nail salon workers, or as you know, people working in other industries, right? Instead, it's just considered something that they attempted to escape in Vietnam. So I think that, unfortunately, like, that's something that we're trying to really bring across this election cycle, is that these policies are there to protect people. They're not there to limit people from reaching their full economic potential, and that ultimately these policies are not benefiting them as small business owners in the long run. So
for sure. Thanks Lillian for sharing that. And I'm looking at the Facebook comments now, and one person, G from in Austin, Texas, mentions that he's seen a lot of Trump slogans around the city and in the Vietnamese around the city and the Vietnamese community. And to his surprise, he's seen a lot of for Biden slogans in those places instead of the Trump slogan. So someone's doing the work out there, right? To try and turn the tide blue. And he says that he hopes that Texas will turn blue, as well as he knows that a lot of Viet folks in Austin secretly vote for Biden too. So I mean, that's always good to hear that, you know, the work out there is getting done. I want to pass it back to the Viet Fact Check team and at Nick and Ada. If y'all could speak to maybe some of the current trends that we're seeing more recently on the Viet Fact Check / disinformation from the disinformation team that y'all have been having to grapple with.
I think, you know, Hunter Biden is a big part of it right now. We put out a survey, and it seems like the other thing that I think people, by the way, this is Kira, so I have a second one. And I don't know why she's not asleep, but that's okay. Kira, do you want to go to sleep?
You want mama.
You want mama? Okay, sorry about that. Excuse me. Go. Okay. One thing that so I think there's a lot of Fast and Furious revelations coming out, and I think, you know, it's really it's a challenge because, like, these are unproven allegations, but they're not proven either way. So everything is circumstantial, right? The idea that, like, you know, Fox News passed on this Hunter Biden story, which should tell you something about whether or not it's legitimate, but it's also like when you're doing a fact checking site, there's a double standard, right? Like, New York Post can treat things as fact that we shouldn't. So, but we know that the storm's going to come and we're going to be reactive to it. The other one is really, I think we should be thinking about immigration a little more. I think people, a very common thread in the Vietnamese American community is that we got in so other people can do the same thing, they follow the rules, which one, isn't true, and two, the rules have changed quite a bit, even in the last 4 years, to be like quite unfair and onerous. And so maybe it's good for us to kind of like do a quick little explainer on the evolution of sort of America's attitude towards refugees. Yeah, I don't think it will make everyone super empathetic, but I think at least they will have some understanding that that Vietnamese refugees today coming from a war-torn country would not be treated particularly well under a Trump administration. And I think that's a really important point to make. But yeah, there's always stuff. I mean, it's a live, you know, we're always looking for volunteers. It's lively to be fighting like right-wing misinformation and trying to pick and choose like what the right things are. The good news is that the memes are fairly predictable. And so I think we are hitting like the key stories that people seem to care about. But of course, you know where to reach us if you have, if you really feel like we've got a blind spot.
Thanks for that, Nick. Thanks for the Viet fact check update. I mean, I feel like me, along with all the fellows, have expressed that. I mean, it's been such a useful tool, right? And also, no one knows where you and the team find the time to do fact checking on everything that comes through, you know, the Vietnamese America, right? So I mean, we're so grateful to have that. I know I'm gonna pass it over to Frederick. Actually, I mean, since we're on this topic of, you know, generations, how we connect to our parents, and how we as, you know, children like are kind of dealing with everything, right? Everything and anything. Frederick, you had mentioned on the Slack channel the double standard, you know, in talking about the debate and how between Trump's children and Biden's children, right? So could you elaborate a little bit
Right.
about that?
So let's talk about that. So this debate in American media, right? You saw that Hunter Biden was brought up, but not one single Trump child was brought up. And his children are very involved in his administration, right? Before this week, you could argue that Tiffany Trump really wasn't a part of his administration, but then she had that 10-minute train wreck of the LGB, whatever she called of a speech for the gays for Trump or whatever. I don't know if anyone saw that. Don't watch it. It's a waste of time. She basically belittles the LGBT community and she leaves off the T purposely because she and her father and his administration has done everything in their power to take away our community's rights. But it's interesting to me that both in the American media and the Vietnamese media, that when they criticize anyone of Donald Trump's party, right, it's very low key. It's not really even a criticization, you know, it's just more of, oh, this is a fact and we're going to move on. And then we're going to talk about Hunter Biden for the next hour, even though the current president and his children are influencing policy and they're unethical and corrupt and they're really in it for themselves, right? So I don't know if anyone else wants to hop on that topic, but I think that is a huge thing that our Vietnamese American community seems to miss, right? They just kind of harp on these emails from Hunter Biden, but they don't talk about the actual corruption and actions of the Trump family. And I think it's important that we hold every person accountable for their own actions.
Trump also did not divest all of his income when he became president to an independent trustee, as has been the precedent set by previous presidents. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think if this debate was about children, Joe won the debate. It's all Trump does with children is attack them, whether it's Biden's child or the children in the migrant children. He wants to harm them all, take away their health care, expose them to COVID. Whereas I think you could tell by Joe's response to the migrant children that he was very passionate about it and that he really cares about taking care of kids. And, you know, he loves Hunter, he loves Bo, you know, and he's not going to back down on that.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is so stark, right? And the difference between not only their policies, their lack of policy, but also the kind of people that they are when we're watching them, right? And the world is watching them on this global stage is, I don't know. I think that being an undecided voter at this time, right? I think one of the motivations for us in Pivot to start the YVA community, the Young Vietnamese Americans Committee, was to really address this the sense of apathy that second generation, first generation Vietnamese Americans were feeling about political issues, right? And I think that to be apathetic now, or to not have an opinion, or to not feel compelled to be doing this sort of work, or to volunteer your time to be doing this sort of work, it's dangerous, right? Not only for us and for future generations, like it's not only dangerous for us, but also for the generations after us, right? And so this will be another plug for you all to check out pivotnetwork.org / join us, right? If y'all want to be part of this movement and this moment, and really be able to look back 10, 20 years from now and say that you're a part of it and that you did something against in the face of adversity, right? So we're running a little bit short on time and we're going to close out soon, but I want to give everyone one last, let's do one last round robin. And if anyone has any, let me find the prompt, any thoughts about what they're hoping to do, what you're all hoping to do in your battleground states in the last 2 weeks leading up to the election. If y'all wanted to share with us any projects that you're working on. I know maybe we can start with Lillian. I know you have the postcards writing project going on, right? So, and then we'll just
the Texas Fellows are currently working on a postcard writing campaign. I have them right here because I haven't sent them out there. But we are actively trying to reach people by writing personalized messages to voters and sending them to people through the mail. We also have these incredible postcards that were designed by a member of Pivot, Cindy. So thank you so much for designing these. But we are actively trying to work to encourage people to vote down ballot for Democratic candidates who ultimately have Texas's best interests at heart moving forward into the future. So, yeah. Should I popcorn it to Frederick?
So North Carolina, I don't think is here today, so I'll go ahead and speak on their behalf. They are having a text bank this Saturday to reach out to their Viet Am community to get out the vote. So if anyone is interested in volunteering for that, reach out to any one of us and we're happy to connect you to the right people. And if anyone is willing to join the Blue Texas team, please know that our missions and goals don't end with the election. There's still a lot of work to do post-election, and that goes for every Pivot team. So if you're interested to get involved in any way, please let any one of us know and we're happy to connect you to your interests. I'll popcorn to anyone in Arizona.
Summer, you look like you're popping off, so.
Sorry. It's just been a week and I just got a reply from someone that I've been waiting to get a reply from. So sorry. Anyways, whew, my bad. Arizona, we actually did a text banking thingy earlier today, and then we're still continuing on with more text banking and phone banking stuff with more NHPI volunteers and all that good stuff. But if this text banking doesn't work, I'm down to just duke it out with some Republicans on the street. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's kind of what Arizona is kind of doing right now, trying to use our voice as much as we can to turn Arizona blue. But we'll see. Popcorn. Min, yeah.
I mean, I agree with Summer. That's what we've been doing most of the time now. For the most part, earlier today, it was just us two and our supervisor sending out probably over 1,000 texts. So it took about an hour and a half, but we got to do what we got to do to turn the state blue.
I'm gonna write that down. We got to do what we got to do to turn the state blue, right?
Bars.
Yeah. Vinh?
Vinh? Yeah.
Yeah, Pennsylvania, working with APIPA. I'm gonna flex, and because I have the data right in front of me, we've made over 400,000 texts and have done over 600,000 now after today phone calls for phone banking. And if anyone wants to get involved, we're doing that all week next week, every single day. And we do specific Viet phone banking on Sundays from 4 to 7. So if anyone wants to help us out, you're more than welcome.
Then I'll pass it back to
California. So
Yeah.
our OGs over here.
The old guy, is that right? What you were saying? So hey, listen, I'm backing everybody. I'm not in a swing state, so I can't do that much. But I will say there's actually a piece of good news coming for Texas. So I've been part of also the API Victory Fund's effort in Texas. I just saw a video that my brother Viet Nguyen is making for Texas and MJ Hagar and Joe Biden. It's going to go out very soon. It's getting kind of late in the game, but we're pushing out. There's a huge media push, not just through Pivot only, but through a lot of other groups in Texas, both digital and ethnic media. So we're going to try to help you all there by, you're all working on the ground, but we're going to try to hit the media airwaves as much as we can.
I'm just going to keep rage typing Viet fact check articles. So, send in ideas if you have any. The anger motivates me.
Thanks for that, Nick. I mean, I think anger is what's motivating all of us too, right? And we channel our anger into positivity and enact some social change. Then what more can we ask for?
I have this gaming keyboard, and when I'm writing stuff for Viet fact check, it's so loud it wakes up my children because I'm just like it's like so stupid. I can't believe I have to write this. And then someone will be like, "Oh, that was super helpful." I'm like, "Oh, I have to write another one." But yeah.
Shout out, thank you, Ada and Kira for your sacrifice of sleep for us to be able to do this work. But with that, y'all, just to kind of close on out, again, thank you to Nick from the Viet Fact Check team. Thank you to the Pivot OG, Ju/Backdom, and to all the fellows for today. Here's a quick slide on who the fellows are, what community organizations that they're working with, and where they're based. And you can reach out to them if you want to collaborate or have any projects that you want to work with for them. You can find the contact information through the Pivot Network Facebook page. We also want to remind you that we're going to be using as much social media to be pushing out the message for multi-generations, right, between now and Election Day. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, bit.ly/projectbackongI. And to segue us on out, before we segue on out, with the video called Ballad to the Ballot by the wonderful Nguyen. Just want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kat, for being an amazing co-MC and for allowing us to have this space in Tamsu Venyao with Pivot, right? We'll have more of these coming soon, and we'll also be having a Pivot Elections watch party. So be on the lookout for that. You'll see more from us soon. Kat, any last words before we segue on out?
Yes, thank you everyone for talking here, sharing your thoughts, what you're doing. Again, like these last 2 weeks are definitely gonna be a push, and the work does not end there. So there's so many different ways to get involved. If you don't know how, you can talk to any of the fellows or any of the people you saw on this call today, and they'll definitely plug you in with all the efforts leading up. All right, cue the video, Philip.
Oh snap, technical difficulties. My bad, y'all. Just gonna segue really quickly. Hold on, I have a backup, no worries. Let's just rewind real quick. Kat, can you hit me with that cue one more time?
Okay, yeah, and cue the video, Philip.
Xin chào quý vị. Welcome, friends. We have a wonderful show for you tonight. But first, a fabulous reminder from the Queen of Voting, Nữ Hoàng Bỏ Phiếu, that you have the chance to change the future.
Night, everyone.